welcome to the Body and Brain Podcast. I'm David Driscoll.
And I'm Soyoung.
This is Minjae.
Well, it's nice to be here with you. Today we are talking about a very common problem, the problem of being overworked and overstressed.
Like the problem of being alive, right?
Especially in the modern world, yes.
I am very familiar with it.
Oh, are you?
Yes.
Well, today's topic is, yes, very common to most people these days. How to stay healthy and happy when you are busy.
And stressed.
And stressed.
Stressed and busy. That's like the story of my life.
Yeah, well, being busy can be good.
That's true.
I like being busy.
Yeah.
It's better than being bored.
But what is the problem these days that, there are so many sources of being stressed out and busy? Like what? What do you find to be the most common sources of your busyness and stress?
Work.
Work.
Yeah, that's one of the top ones.
Yeah. Top answer.
Uh-huh.
Good job. You
Yeah.
won.
Mm-hmm.
And then how about
Family.
number 2? Family. Oh, yeah. Family. A good one.
Mm-hmm. And
Relationships.
Relationships.
People. Mm-hmm.
People. Personal health.
Yeah.
Personal health.
At different times in our lives. I think that's a big
Right.
one.
Right.
And any number of other things.
So we need to have a certain level of stress. A certain level of stress is healthy, and it's good to be busy. But what can a person do to stay healthy and be happy, despite being stressed and busy?
Exactly. Because some people thrive under stress.
Right.
And then some people seem to always wish that they didn't have the stress. And what is our way, as body and brain practitioners and teachers and also brain education practitioners, what is our way of dealing with stress that turns it into something we can thrive with rather than something we want to avoid?
So in my case, I got lots of stress, of course.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Lucky you.
Yeah. Thank you. And whenever I do that, then I feel like, oh, what is my 0 point? And when I meditate about my stress more, then in most cases I found out that, the stressors, the thing that gives me stress is actually myself. Not the project or work or other people, but it is more like self-doubt.
So you create your own stress.
Right.
You created your own stress. So, in a sense, I think what I find that we do a lot is problem solving. And that you can either look at life as a series of things that are uncomfortable that I wish didn't happen, or you can look at it as a series of challenges to overcome and get stronger with. So one thing that I see a lot with our teachers and our members is problem solving becomes a very satisfying part of our life.
Right.
So how have you experienced problem solving? Do you like having problems to solve?
Yes.
Yeah?
I don't. Who likes having problems? I don't want to have problems. But I do find that if I think of like the whole spectrum of possible problems that I could have or that I could be facing right now, and I think of the problems that I am facing, then I actually feel grateful that, well, it could have been a lot worse. So basically, when a problem happens, you have to see that this is what makes my life interesting. And when I solve this problem, it's going to be awesome and I'm going to feel great.
Wow.
And therefore, you feel motivated to attack the problem.
Yeah. So the first thing is that we can't avoid problems.
Right.
So there's usually, I think, there has to be a realization at a certain point in life, everybody realizes I can't make problems stop. There might be a few people out there who have the luxury of feeling like they can control it through money or through their skill and intelligence. But for most of us, problems will not stop. So then what do?
We got to solve them.
Well, there's 2 reactions, right? One is, let's pretend like they're not there.
Right.
And try to avoid them as often as possible. And the other one is not pretending that they're not there and really facing them. So what are the pros and cons of each of those methods?
So even when you try to avoid them, we still know that there is a problem.
So some level, our brain is completely aware that there's still problems no matter how hard we try to avoid.
Right. So, and then if you keep trying to avoid them, then I think that is when you have some mental issue.
Good point.
Yeah. For myself, it is true. So when I try to avoid them, then I feel not comfortable.
More stress,
Right.
more anxiety. I think we read something that recently there's been a big increase in the number of deaths due to kind of depression and suicide.
And substance abuse
and
as
substance
well.
abuse. So ultimately, substance abuse is
That's also about avoiding,
completely.
right? Because you want the escape.
You want the escape.
Right.
You want to feel different.
Right.
So that's a big one. Okay, so that's a really big problem with trying to avoid problems.
Right.
So there's always more problems.
Yeah. Sometimes we need some wiggle room, so we
Like
we
you go
need
on
it.
vacation or whatever, you
Right.
take a break. But the thing is, when you come back, it's still going to be there.
You know it's going to be there. And I think that's what you say. The vacation thing is a big one because for a lot of people, the idea is balancing out stress with no stress. Either the
Right.
time or the level of pleasure that I get in my free time,
Right.
living for the weekend. So, but I don't think that works.
Not in the long run.
Right.
And how about if you want to grow?
You can take a vacation, I think giving some elbow room for your mind when your mind is so busy, taking care of the problem. I think the vacation from sometimes is good, but it is not for the purpose of avoiding the problems, but it is more like giving yourself time to meditate about it. And then when you have some time for yourself, then it will give you the opportunity to see things from different perspective.
Right. Which is useful if you want to solve the problem.
Yes, that
And
is important.
Sometimes you really do just need to give yourself a little time, and it helps.
Right.
But there's a difference between giving yourself that time with the intention of using your centeredness and your awakening versus just hoping that the stress goes away and that you don't feel it again when you come back to work or come back to your issues.
Yeah. In my experience, so when I actually started as a member, I had so much stress. Even though I was in my early 20s at the time, I had really bad back pain. I was an art major in college, and I would just work and work and work until I felt like my back was going to break. And then eventually it became like a really bad back issue. And I was like 20, in my early 20s. And so when I started the training and classes, what I noticed was that when you have pain and it's there all the time, you notice it and it bothers you. And when the pain goes away, then it's like you don't remember that you used to have this pain that bothered you all the time. But one thing I really noticed was that after class, I was so relaxed. And then, or even during the breathing and meditation, I would have moments of like I could feel the tension coming out of my body. And then I would think to myself, I had that realization like, oh my gosh, I didn't know I had so much stress in my body because I could feel it coming out. And that was, so a key thing there, I think, is the awareness. And one thing that really helped me a lot was learning how to maneuver my awareness.
So yeah, that reminds me of the difference between just trying to feel relaxed versus actively doing something to relieve your stress. Because I also had a big benefit when I first started doing yoga. I felt a huge benefit in my body. Then I also felt my mind changing. I could see things clearly and more confidently, and I could see the answers and the potential solutions to problems more clearly. And that was from relaxing.
Right.
So relaxing is really good, but there's a difference between relaxation through facing something, actively doing it, versus trying to avoid. In fact, through avoidance, there's more anxiety. I don't know if I feel better. I don't know why I feel better. I don't really know what to do the next time I get stressed.
So fundamentally, it is about wanting to face your problems,
I think so.
right?
And
I think that's a
also,
big
I
one.
think experiencing, like having the experience of facing your problem and getting to the other side.
Right.
And knowing that, if I actually face the problem and solve it, then afterwards it's going to be much better.
Yeah, and then trusting that there's a system in this body and brain for releasing stress and for finding solutions. That actually problem solving is built into our brain. So
Okay,
if
that
we
is very
study how it works, we get better at problem solving.
I think that is very important point. And there are lots of people who are disconnected with their body and their problems. So as Soyoung said, there are many people who don't know that they have lots of stress.
And if
Yeah,
you
they're
don't know you
storing
have
up.
stress, you also don't know where the solution is.
Right.
I would
And
say.
that is why body and brain, we begin from our body.
Always.
And then sensitizing the brain. Because we want to wake up the senses, the basic sense of our body and brain.
I just watched Hobbs and Shaw, the new Fast and Furious movie with The Rock Jason
good?
Statham. I thought it was really good.
I love I love both of them.
Yeah, they're both
great.
really good.
They're really
You know The Rock, right?
Yeah.
Of course.
Big muscles.
Yeah.
He has a couple lines in the movie which I think are really his personal opinions that he just put in there.
Okay.
And one of them, somebody says, "Oh, you're too busy lifting weights. You should go read a book or something." And he says, "There's more wisdom in the body than in all the books in that
I like
library."
Oh, good for him.
And you know, I think
Yeah.
he's obviously somebody who lives with that idea that through working with your body, you can learn a lot.
Yeah.
And I think that's really true.
Yes.
And I thought that was really a fun moment. So I recommend the movie.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got to check it out.
So facing the problem and wanting to feel it, that's a big part. But that's not easy.
Right.
Why is that so difficult? And what can we do about the natural desire to avoid pain and avoid emotion that comes from facing our stress?
Right. It's the pain. Like, people don't want to feel pain.
Mm-hmm.
But that's another thing you have to realize, that you can't let yourself identify with your pain. You have to know that I'm not my pain.
All right. Well, that's one thing to say, I know that I'm not my pain, or you have
Right.
to realize that. But how does someone actually do that? What can they practically do or practice to get better at that?
And
rather than just telling themselves that idea over and over.
Right. And it's not about, self-harm or like causing more suffering to yourself on purpose.
Yeah, no,
It's
we want to
different.
feel
Right.
feel less misery. We
But
want to
I-
be happier and healthier. But what does that have to do with feeling like stress and pain?
Well, for example, there's Yeondan is the burning exercise where you hold a
Burning
posture
exercise.
for a certain amount of time. So
It's basically a static exercise that requires your focus and strength.
exactly. And so in the early days of my training, when I started doing Yeondan especially, like sleeping tiger, I know we've talked about this before, but the first time I was like, what is this thing? It's so miserable and so hard, even though it looks like nothing.
Right.
And I could feel my whole body was shaking from the effort. But then I felt not so bad because the other guy next to me, who looked a lot bigger and stronger, was having a much harder time than I was.
Right.
His
Not
shaking,
about the
like,
muscle size.
He was shaking the whole floor and the blinds on the windows. And he was really like, he was grunting and groaning and sweating. So I felt not so bad. But anyway, the point is, like, while you're holding that posture, and I knew in my head that my body was physically capable of maintaining this posture. And yet I could feel so much miserable pain in my hips, in my hip joints, my back, eventually later on I could, even my wrists were sore, or sometimes we do that.
So why were you confident to use that? Because for some people, the moment that they start to feel that, they say, this is not good for me. Something is going wrong. I shouldn't feel this. But how did you know that it was actually productive?
I think it's because I also I was thinking, not that this is bad for me, but I should be able to do this. And the fact that it's hard was really annoying and irritating.
Yeah, so it's irritating because you know that there's a capability there.
Right, because I knew I could do it.
So
and yet
something
it was
is blocking,
so difficult.
something is getting in the way of what you know you have the potential to do.
Right.
And that gives you the motivation to
overcome the pain.
and to find a
Yeah.
way through. That's great. How about for Minjae, what would you say that you've learned that is useful for wanting to be a problem solver, to wanting to use your brain's ability to be a problem solver, even though it's uncomfortable? How can you face it?
Wow, that's a very good point. Because these days it is so easy to avoid the problems.
It is
Yeah, there are lots
easy.
of entertainment and just one click for YouTube. They can
Right
find
in
a bunch
your
of-
phone.
Right.
Yeah, bunch
The
of
You
palm
can
of
spend
your
you can
hand.
spend an entire lifetime. I heard that there's 150 hours of YouTube footage uploaded each minute.
Oh my god.
So it means no matter how much you could turn on like 100 screens and watch something different, and you would still never finish all of the content.
Right, and it is very important that is why we need to keep mindful about ourselves, and mindfulness, and that is very important. And so you need to
What do you mean
I
by
think,
mindfulness?
be aware of something when you are doing.
Okay, so this is something I'd be interested to know is what are you actually doing? What are you reminding yourself of, or how are you reminding yourself? I think a lot of people who are interested in being more mindful, who believe in the idea that I want to face my problems and I want to be the owner, but how do I remember to do that? Like I start just thinking about it and then I get stressed out again. And then what's the difference between just thinking about it versus really becoming a great problem solver?
Because you know that what you do today is aligned to your purpose.
To your purpose.
Yeah.
Okay, so purpose has a role to play in this. But is purpose, like, what do I get from having a purpose? Is it just another thing that I think about instead of my pain? Do I try to distract myself with purpose or what?
Because if you don't have purpose, then you don't have the direction.
It's about purpose, but I think it's also about results. So, purpose, like your goal, you can have a much larger goal, but you can also have smaller goals.
Right.
Like these mini goals are very popular.
Okay, so seeing results.
Right. So seeing results that can help you that can help to motivate you to solve problems.
And if
to
you don't have a
overcome pain.
purpose, you won't ever appreciate results that much.
Right.
But you need to have the clear, when you have clear purpose, and then when you know that my everyday result is aligned to that purpose, then you feel much more motivated and have pride about them yourself.
That resonates with my experience of yandan, sleeping tiger posture, because I don't want to just take somebody's word for it when they say something is good for me, because there's a lot of advice out there which is not really practical, I think. But when I would do sleeping tiger and it was painful and shaking, and I was one of those people in the beginning who was shaking the floor. And I was a young guy, the very young guy when I started, and I thought, I'm so fit.
Very athletic.
But it was very hard to do these exercises. But afterwards, the results were very apparent. I was more relaxed, I was more centered, and my body felt lighter and more flexible. And for me, that was all the proof I needed. Right. That was better than anybody's explanation.
Right.
Was having done it, the experience of it. But it also aligned with my purpose. My purpose was wanting to feel that way. Even if it meant going through a painful exercise, if I could feel that way, it was aligned with my purpose. It meant I wanted to do it again.
So I hope that our social system or the information that we can easily see from the mass media can be motivating people to have their purpose.
That's right.
Yeah, so that, the young generation, the people in the school, when they have clear idea about their purposes, then they will be much more like empowered for their life.
Do you think it's a danger to have a wrong purpose? Like, should people be worried that, oh, what if I have the wrong purpose? I'm working so hard, but it might be wrong.
Right, yeah.
So is that like, should they not try until they're 100% sure what their life purpose is?
So I think we can have firm belief of ourselves. So we can make a mistake and we can have not the wrong purpose but less fulfilling purpose. But when you take action on it, when you act on it, then I think we can get a better idea.
Okay, so what would you say? It's like a lot of people, when I say that, they wanna start something, but they're like, but I just don't know if that's the right thing for me. I don't know if that's really what I'm passionate about.
I think here also, earlier Minjae was talking about mindfulness, and we touched upon awareness very briefly. I want to say that awareness is so important, and especially it's easy to get in your head and be thinking about all these things and then wonder is this right? Is it not right? And that's where it's not just brain but body. It's body and brain. Your body is also so important, and depending on how you think of it, your body is actually an extension of your brain. And so to bring your awareness back into your body is a way to ground yourself in reality. So when you there was one time when I was so stressed and I didn't know what to do with myself, and I reached out to a senior master. Actually, because I didn't know who to talk to about my problems, and I didn't know what to do with myself. And then she asked me this very simple question, which it was kind of embarrassing, but also, so she said, "Are you focusing on your danjeon right now?" And I was like, "Oh no, whoops! How could I forget such a?"
We talk about it all the time
basic
in this
thing,
practice, right? Your danjeon is your lower abdomen.
It's the energy center.
Your energy center, your
Right.
gut, your center of gravity, your
And
core, your
I
second
mean,
chakra,
right.
whatever you want to call it.
At this point, I'd already done so much training. Like we used to do a candle watching exercise where you practice imagining a candle like flame inside of your lower abdomen. So while you're doing everything else in your day, you have to also picture that in your mind and in your belly at the same time. So if you forget, if you lose that visual image of the candle in your belly, it means you're not focusing on your tanja. So I did so many different trainings, but you know, life gets in the way, you get busy, whatever, and I totally forgot, and I was just freaking out and I didn't know what to do. And she was like, "Are you focusing on your tanja?" And I was like, "Oh, whoops." But also another thing she suggested was to feel your toes. So if you can physically feel your toes, then that's a really good way to ground yourself. To bring your mind and awareness back into your body, and then from there, your body actually can tell you and communicate with you and say,
There's a lot of wisdom.
Right,
There's
exactly.
The process of relaxing and getting power starts. Problem solving starts. What I think of when you mention that is we have to kind of like estimate that our brain is not fully aware, that our consciousness is often distracted.
Right.
And we have to take that into account and kind of be humble enough to create routines, to do things that will bring us back, whether we know we need to come back or not.
Right.
So I think about that a lot, like the power of routine. If you really want to become a better problem solver and deal with stress, you have to build the routines into your life that bring you back to your body or bring you back to what we call like the 0 point. Because it's not going to happen just because you realize you need to do it.
Well, yeah, for people who may or may not be familiar with the 0 point, I think we should just clarify very briefly, like, what is the 0 point? How do you get there? What does it mean? What does it mean to recover the 0 point? What is that?
Well, it's similar to just being mindful. It means basically being able to watch the reactions instead of just reacting to them.
Right.
So for example, staying in the Yandan posture, sleeping tiger posture, it's uncomfortable. The reaction from the body is naturally, I don't like this.
Right.
Right.
And if you're not aware, your brain will take that feeling and say, how can I stop this? And you will put your legs down, or you will quit, or you will come up with some reason why the instructor is not to be believed.
Right.
And all of that is very normal. So having a 0 point or having the ability to watch that and say, yes, I have this feeling, but I choose to keep going.
I remember very distinctly having that moment of this sucks and it feels horrible and I want to stop, but I felt there was like a click and a shift in my mind where if I choose to, I can just keep going. I can keep going forever if I really want to.
And that's kind of like the 0 point, right?
So that's like the
ability
detachment.
to watch and to choose. But it's not from avoidance. It's not from like detachment in the way of, I don't feel it anymore. It's in the way of like, I have the power to choose what to do with this, even though it might be uncomfortable.
Right. So 0 point is a metaphor that there's a scale, and then on the scale you put something, then there is not 0 point, right? So there's a Korean saying that mountain is mountain and water is water. So that is kind of very
How true it is.
Very Korean.
yeah.
Can't argue with that.
Right.
I know.
Yeah. But when we see that, then when you have some mental thing, or when you feel moody, and when you are angry, then we cannot see the mountain as mountain itself. We see mountain plus something. When you feel good, then all the mountains look great. But when you feel depressed, then they don't look as great as it was.
So in other words, we're saying like our emotions act like a filter, and we're
filter.
seeing
Right.
things through the filter.
Yes.
So
So
we're not really seeing them clearly.
right. So when we do the interpersonal relationships, or when you work on our project or anything, then we always, not always, but sometimes we put something on the scale.
I think it's quite common.
Yeah. Or there's rose-colored glasses.
Rose-colored glasses. I think when you meet, in my experience, when you meet somebody who has a truly amazing insight, an ability to see things clearly and take action with clarity, like that's really impressive. And with those people, when I met them, I think what I realized is they have that 0 point. They're not adding extra filters too much
Right.
to the information.
So it is very difficult and challenging to stay in the 0 point all the time. So what if we do have time for meditation once a day at night before going to bed? then we can have some time to meditate, breathe out, and reflect about myself, and going back to the 0 point, and let go of all the unprocessed emotions before going to bed.
That sounds great.
Yeah, there were times a few years back when I was just really stressed and traveling a lot. And one thing that actually really helped me was I did bowing meditation, and I could do 103 bows. It took me about 11 or 12 minutes, and then a little bit of meditation. So in my when I was talking to myself about this, I'd be like, it takes about as much or less time than a shower. I shower every day, so I should at least do some kind of training. But definitely, I think it really helped to clear all the stress and all the busy thinking and all the everything, all the gunk from my day could come out from this act of meditation. And it's a moving meditation, so you're moving your body, and that helps because when it's hard to control your mind, then I think at least I can move my body.
I totally
and I
agree.
can control that. But it really helped to clear my mind and refresh my energy.
So bowing meditation is very good meditation.
Bowing meditation, yes. Bowing uses the whole body. It's very active. I also, at night, I really enjoy taking time before sleep because I feel like, I did it yesterday. I felt like if I do a little bit of brainwave vibration, moving meditation, then by now what actually happens is everything that I've been thinking about kind of replays a summary, and it'll go through 1 and then 2 and 3. So if I watched a movie, that'll be there. If I had a conversation, spent time with somebody, that'll be there. If I got worried about something at work, that'll be there. And it'll go through all of them in a row, kind of back through the past day.
So you're replaying your day.
And it'll kind of take it out, some of the stress and emotion
process
around
everything.
it. And then I feel like I can, at some point, my awareness comes back into my body, and I feel a certain kind of thing in my body, and then I can sleep.
That
So
is
you've
very
done this
good.
mental sorting, and then
It does this mental
it
sorting.
makes everything all neat and tidy. And
It's like taking a shower, actually.
yeah.
If I don't do it, I feel like I'm getting in bed, and all this stuff is in bed with me.
It's the grimy energy
Yeah.
of your day, energy grime of the day.
So it's like an emotional shower.
Yeah, emotional
Yeah.
shower, and my dreams are different. If I don't do that, my dreams have all this stuff kind of in them.
Yeah.
And if I do some training before bed, then it tends to be a little bit more peaceful.
Right. Yeah. If I don't do training right before I go to bed, then when I wake up in the morning, I realize I've dreamt about all the stuff
Yeah.
that happened the day before.
And I didn't necessarily want to have that there. So you have to decide, am I really creating my own stress by what I allow my mind to play with and digest? Am I truly creating? Is stress something that we create, or is the outside world creating it?
Yeah, of course, is we creating it.
It's
But
easy to say that, but
it's so hard to do. It's really hard to change your perception of stress and the things that happen. And
how do I know that I am really creating it? How can I have the conviction that I am creating it, and therefore that I can solve it?
I think it's all about your choice. If you believe that something else or somebody else is creating my stress, then you are right. But if you believe that,
And that'll be your experience.
yeah, if you believe that you are the one who creates the stress, then also you are right too. So it's a matter of a choice. But if you think that somebody else is creating the stress for me, then in my case, then I feel, I'm hopeless.
Yeah, so that's the thing. How could I tell that I'm actually getting stronger? Let's say that somebody yelled at me at work, and I thought it was really unfair. It was really unfair. And then I can either choose, I created my stress, but that person was really unfair and they yelled at me, and that's a fact. And I didn't like it. And they were unfair. But how do I know that by saying I created the stress, how can I know that I'm actually getting a benefit? What is good for me about that?
Because what they do, I'm not saying that it is fair, but what they do is their karma.
Okay,
And
but
then-
karma, but what is the benefit to me? Am I just playing a victim by saying that it was my fault? They were unfair to me, they yelled at me. I created the stress. Am I just going to allow them to do it again? How am I actually getting better by saying that I was the creator of the stress?
Well, if you're solving the problem, then it means next time they won't yell at you for the same thing.
Okay.
You can yell at him back.
Oh,
You can
dear.
yell at them back. I'm the creator. Can you feel a difference if you say, "Oh, that person was so mean and unfair," then how's the rest of your night going to be versus, "Oh, that seemed really mean and unfair, but I guess I created that one."
Well, I mean, anyways, like it's empowering. Well, when you have the choice to move on, to let it go and not like stew over it. At least it has
Are you
that.
more likely to stew over it if you feel the other person was the creator or if I was the creator?
Yeah, I think if
I think I would be more likely to be obsessed and keep being stressed out by it if I felt like the other person
Right.
was in control,
Right.
creating.
Yeah.
And even though it's hard, if I can see like, oh, but at some level I'm making this miserable, then I'm not attached to it. I can let it go and sleep more peacefully.
I think there's some balance that, what he or she did to me was their thing. But how to react to that is my thing. So I think we need to accept the fact that we cannot control what they do to me, but we can have full control over how I react
and
to that.
that's from the 4 agreements, right? Don't take it personally.
Don't take it personally.
Yeah.
And if you take that to extremes, you can really just never be bothered by something. Because everything that happens outside is just a fact. But the emotions that I feel are my choice. If you practice that.
Right.
Yeah, I like that idea.
Yeah.
And so can you really change? But again, some people are afraid to do that because they feel like they'll be made victims of. Because it looks something like, or it sounds like, I'm just going to accept people's bad behavior towards me and I'm never going to get upset. But that's not it, is it?
No.
No, it's different, and it really, I mean, you have to pick your battles wisely, and if it's depending, it completely depends on the context. So if it's the kind of individual who's reasonable and, you can use... So when I was in 7th grade, we had to take adolescent skills. And in 7th grade in adolescent skills, we learned when you, I feel because, which it's just been burned into my memory forever. Do you know about this? You didn't
No.
have...
When
don't-
I feel because?
Yeah.
When
so
you, I
so
feel- when you do
basically,
something, okay.
let's say, so the example at the time was, your parents are yelling at you. And then instead of yelling back and slamming the door or whatever, then you make this statement and complete the sentence of when you yell at me,
I
I feel like it doesn't help because I can hear you just as well when you're not yelling, and it only makes me angry if you yell. So when you yell, I feel angry because I feel like it's unfair and it's not necessary, and I can still understand you. So it's basically forcing or having somebody create a sentence with when you, I feel because enables them to have that kind of the one level of detachment where you can be the observer.
Okay,
That's
so
very good.
using language is one
Right.
way. You can adjust your language. And that requires watching. So that's a good way to remind yourself is through little systems like that.
Yeah,
There is
and-
also good practice with the 4 agreements. Be
Right.
impeccable with your words.
right.
Impeccable with your words. Yeah, so
And-
language has a big
Right.
effect.
But in that experience where the person is yelling at you at work, or oh my gosh, yeah, in that example where the person is yelling at you at work, you can. One other thing I don't remember where this is from is just to be like, why are you yelling, or why are you so angry? And instead of reacting and yelling back, it's just bringing the awareness to the moment and just trying to have a normal conversation with the person.
And I think no matter what you're doing and what techniques you're using, the minute that you choose your reaction, you give yourself power again.
Right.
So that's really the key. And you can find a million different ways of doing it, but that choice is really going to direct your focus back in.
Yeah.
That's how you reclaim yourself.
Yeah. So any choice.
But like anything else, it really requires training.
It requires training.
Without training ourselves for that, then it is easy to say that, but it's very hard to do it
Very hard.
at that moment.
But that difficulty, that realness of it, like you can tell if somebody is not that good at it, and they're just saying it, but inside they're still reacting.
Right.
You can still feel that emotion.
Right.
But when someone has really practiced this and taken this in deeply, then they become like a master. And that changes the situation, in my experience. Yeah. Have you felt that? Once you finally master yourself, that the outside changes? That something around you is different?
Mastership is hard, but...
How about you?
Yeah.
How about you? Yeah.
I felt that in certain conflicts with certain people.
Okay.
That's not vague or ambiguous at all.
Let's keep it vague and ambiguous.
No, it is very clear to me.
Very clear to you.
Okay.
For some reason, I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Certain conflicts that I knew that there would be nothing good that can come of like arguing or trying to defend myself. And yet it's a very natural reaction. But at a certain point, at first it's very awkward. Oh, okay, fine. I accept what you're saying and I'm not upset. But inside it's still very upsetting. But then after a while, reaching a certain point of kind of repeating over and over, facing that, okay, really, it doesn't matter. Okay, I've been through this before. Really, it doesn't matter. And then finally getting some ability to choose authentically. An open-hearted response or a calm response.
Yeah, and when you actually there's that moment where you actually accept the situation.
You really accept it. And first of all, personally, I feel great. Because I've wanted to be able to do that, and I haven't been able to do that. To finally be able to do that is a success. And so it's rewarding. It's like, wow, that was much better.
Yeah.
And then that little wave of energy going out, I don't know if the person noticed it, but in the conflict, the person has no fuel to get angrier. And for sure, their response is much more peaceful than it would have been.
And it doesn't even matter if they notice it or not, but people are affected by energy.
And it might not be the first time either, because there can be a history of it's always uncomfortable. And then the first couple times, even though I succeeded in being calm, they still react defensively. But then 2 or 3 times, no longer do they feel the need to kind of lash out. And I've seen that. And I think it really did change. And the first couple times I doubted it. I wasn't sure it was going to make a difference. But after seeing it work, now even in new situations that are hard, I trust it'll get there.
I think there is a very important example for mastership of our life. You can see the same thing as as a master or slave, but actually you can choose yourself as a master, and that is when we can actively solve the problems.
Yeah. But you have to have that, and that's a big one for me also, is eventually your choices turn into your identity. And at a certain point, you look at somebody and you say, oh, that person's just confident. But why do they have that identity? It's because of the choices they made.
Right. Yeah, and they probably worked on it really hard.
Yeah, and there was probably a time when their identity wasn't there yet, but they were committed to acting that way.
Yeah, I mean, I can think of experiences where I had some really difficult relationships with people that I felt were insufferable. I can give all sorts of examples, but it's but you have to work with this person.
There's a very clear example, yes.
And then I would try to convince myself, and I'd be like, you're not going to be, this person will not be in your life forever. And you can treat them well no matter how they treat you. And you will be much happier afterwards than if you just react.
And did it work?
And it really did. Eventually you get to a point, I got to a point where I was just able to accept and adapt myself to interact well with those people. And then what happens is when you reach that state of that harmonious state and you don't mind being with them, even though they were insufferable before, but you don't mind anymore. And when it's actually okay, then your assignment's finished, your training's done, you move on and you go on to the next person who's insufferable. Right.
Or
it's
you
fine,
might
great.
actually realize a couple things. First of all, that this person is actually pretty great. That there are a lot of qualities that you didn't notice before because of reacting. And secondly, the self-awareness to see more clearly how I was contributing a problem to the situation, which I just could not observe before because of the pain and because of the defensiveness. And that's real growth because I noticed how I want to change myself. But to get to that point, often, first acceptance, first ownership, the choice. And then I get to see that thing clearly for the first time. And that's really life-changing when you can finally accept what you want to change about yourself.
And also it is very helpful when you have a clear idea of your purpose, then you can do it better. You can do it easily.
Right.
Yeah. So
Without a purpose, it's really hard to face things.
Right.
Because they are distracting and painful, and they'll create doubt, like, is this worth it? Am I going in the right direction? You can't tell based on feelings.
if you don't have purpose, then you have much less reasons why you need to face the problems.
Why you need to keep watching even though I want to run away.
Right.
That's why the people, even without some practice, brain education or any yoga or meditation,
Or Tai Chi.
if they have a purpose, they will go through things, and sometimes they'll have great power and sometimes they'll just have wisdom, but it's because they couldn't give up.
Right.
So they had to see through the initial resistance.
Right. So when you have purpose, then what you do is like yoga, tai chi, and breathing, meditation. All those things will be great tools.
And the deeper your purpose,
Right.
the more you'll get out of it.
So then the question for next time is going to be, how do you find your purpose?
How do you find your purpose? Good. Sounds
Yeah.
great.
Good.
Yeah. So next time, let's talk about it.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you both. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you guys. And thank you everybody for listening and being with us again.
Please don't forget to comment below on anything related to this conversation that you found interesting, and like this video.
And if you believe there is somebody else around you who will get benefit from this video, please share this video.
That's
and
right.
subscribe.
Yay. Subscribe. Coming up in the next segment. Okay, we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.